Welcome back everyone to the second episode on cold calling in position. In this lesson we're going to look into cold calling versus a wider range. We are sitting on the button and the cutoff is open raising this time and we have to make a decision whether to fold, cold call or 3-bet. Let's jump right into the action here. First of all, let's make a comparison button versus cutoff. The population at PLO 50 is cold calling 16% of the time, 3-betting 8.7. GTO recommended, it's 9.9% cold call versus 9% 3-bet. PLO 500, we're looking at 15.2% cold call, so already a big increasement. 3-betting 8.1, and PLO 5000 is 20.7% cold call and 7.6% 3-bet. You can see again, the biggest difference comes from cold calling here. The cold call range becomes much wider the higher stakes you are going to play, where the rake is relatively much lower. Therefore, you can enter the pot more often. The 3-bet range remains much more similar. As you can see, it goes from 9 to 7.6, so it's not that big of a difference there. We're going to look into cold calling here. Button versus cutoff. Let's look into our range first of all. Again, on the left side here, double suited and single suited and rainbow aces. You can see it's a pure 3-bet in the bright green bar. The Broadway pairs and the mid-low pairs, you can see them here. We're going to jump into those categories now again, looking at kings and queens. You can see there's already more 3-betting here versus the cutoff in comparison to the previous episode where we looked at versus early position. So the wider our opponent is open raising, the more we can start 3-betting these high pairs. Mid-low pairs, still very low 3-bet numbers there. Cold calling, again, very tight and well-defined range and a lot of folding there, even against the cutoff. Let's look into kings and queens. When we look at double-suited kings, you can now see that the 3-bet frequency increases significantly. Before it was 11% versus early position. Now we increase to 59%. So a lot of hands are strong enough to 3-bet versus a RFI range on the cutoff, which is around 30%, I would say. Hands like king, king, 5-4 double suited, as well as ace, king, king, queen this time, which was a cold call versus early position. But now against the cutoff, a wider range, the likelihood of getting 4-bet is much lower. So now all these double suited kings that are strongly connected are good enough to go for a 3-bet. When we look at kings that are single suited and rainbow, we can see a fold frequency still 22%. I would argue that most players will call most their kings in this situation. Then we have 50% calling and 25% 3-betting. Hands to fold are king, king, 8-5 single suited to disconnected, calling king, king, 4 deuce. There is also not the greatest connectivity, but we do have that king high suit, which helps, and the 4 and the deuce are somewhat connected. King, king, queen, jack, also a clear call here. We don't want to 3-bet and risk getting 4-bet here with this hand that plays perfectly well, heads up, but also multi-way. We don't mind pulling in the blinds here. 3-betting, ace, king, king, single suited, even with the nut suit, like against a wider range, these hands are just strong enough to go for the 3-bet. And then we can add in some more disconnected kings that have a lot of equity against a 30% RFI range, but that aren't perfectly connected, like king, king, jack, 7. These hands are capable of 3-betting here. You can also flat them. I leave it a little bit up to you. But just to remind you that some of these king's hand with the king high suit there that have some form of connectivity, but not the greatest, they are also capable of 3-betting. But cold calling there is also fine, especially in the games that we're playing. Cold calling here could also be totally okay here. But you can see 25% single suited kings are supposed to be a 3-bet with the ace. Start 3-betting them and you can add in a few other combos there as well. Queens that are double suited, 7% fold, 57% calling and 36% 3-betting. Folding, again, the most disconnected double suited combinations like queen, queen, 7-3 here. Double suited is a fold. And then we're 3-betting the very, very best queens, and the majority of the other combinations are just a call. Not going to show those. Queen, queen, 9-8 could be strong enough to 3-bet here. As well as, of course, the ace, queen, queen double suited type of hands there are also good enough to go for a 3-bet if we block aces there. Queen, queen, single suited and rainbow combinations, you can see it here. 58% folding. So a lot of single suited queens are just supposed to be a fold, where many players will just call way too many of them, and therefore our overall cold call frequency is much higher. We have a call of 31% only and a 3-bet of 11%. Hands like queen, queen, 7, 8 with the 8 high suit is just supposed to be a fold. We lack in high suit value there. With the queen high suit, the hand would be good enough to call here, but with the 8 high suit, it's a fold. As well as queen, queen, 10, 5 single suited. Even though we have the queen, I see the hand is too disconnected. We don't play that well here, so we just want to muck that hand. Calling, if we have the king in addition, which helps here, when we have the king high suit, king, queen, queen, 6, as well as queen, queen, 5, 4, queen high suit, and better connectivity there. Candidates here to 3-bet, ace, queen, queen, 9, single suited. It's a hand that has enough equity and is strong enough to go for that 3-bet here. But calling there could also be okay. In general, ace, king, queen hands against the 30% RFI range is a very good candidate to start going for the 3-bet, even if your opponent is not folding as often as he should. We still have a lot of equity, of course, against the 30% range. Another candidate, ace, queen, queen, deuce here with the queen high suit. Also great hand again to 3-bet. We've seen that in the previous examples, in the previous video. If we don't have the ace high suit, we are more likely to go for that 3-bet because our hand doesn't benefit as much from multi-way playability with the non-nut suit there. So if I would choose one of the last combinations, I would rather cold call ace, queen, queen, 9 with the nut suit and 3-bet ace, queen, queen, deuce with the non-nut suit here, if I would have to make a decision and choose one to call and one to 3-bet. Let's continue here by looking into the rundowns. Similar as before, we can see more 3-betting here. Our open raising range of our opponent gets wider, so we can start adding in more 3-bets. Let's look into some examples again. Rundowns, 0, 1, 2 gaps, double suited. The lowest and the weakest ones, even if they are perfectly connected, 5, 4, 3 deuce is a fold. Also the 6 and 7 high rundowns with like 2 gaps in there are also supposed to be a fold. Don't go and enter the hand with those candidates. We do have some calls, but not too many, like the 1 gappers with the 7 high rundowns with like 1 gap are capable of calling. 7, 6, 5, 3, for example. We don't want to 3-bet these combinations. And then we start 3-betting against wider ranges, starting from like 8 high rundowns, 8, 9 high rundowns. That's sort of the starting point. Against the early position RFI, we've seen it in a previous lesson. We start 3-betting from 9 high rundowns basically, but here we can be a little bit more liberal and wider, and therefore an 8 high, 8, 7, 6, 4 hand is capable also of 3-betting. Single suited rundown, 0, 1, 2 gaps, a lot of folding suddenly, 55%, a big increasement, 37% calling only, and 8% 3-bet. Hands like queen, jack, 10, 7, even suited to the queen. It's just a fold here. Don't overvalue those semi-connected single suited rundowns. You want to look out for more connectivity. 2 gaps is just too weak in general. Same for king, queen, jack, 8. Look out with these single suited rundowns that don't have an ace. You want to look out for hands that have 0 and 1 gap basically, and that is sort of it. 3 gaps, we can use some of the very strongly connected high card heavy hands with the non-nut suit to go for sort of a 3-bet semi-bluff. Hands like ace, queen, 10, 9 for example, could be a hand to 3-bet. If you would have the nut suit here, then calling is also totally fine here, of course. Ace, king, jack, 10, like with 4 Broadway cards, the hands are generally too strong to just flat. These are often used as a call, as a 3-bet, sorry. Cold calling could be okay as well, depending a little bit on who is behind you. For example, if there are recreational players in the blind or fishy players that you want to get in there, then you can also just totally fine call them because they have perfect multi-way playability, of course. But in general, ace X with 3 other Broadway cards are mainly used as a 3-bet versus 30% RFI range. 3 Broadway plus 1 non-Broadway, double suited. 3-betting the very best ones like king, jack, 10, 7, as well as ace, king, queen, deuce. Like the ace, king, queen, deuce against a tighter range, we saw it in the last lesson. It was just a call, but against a wider range, we can now start 3-betting them. As well as the best connected sort of semi-like rundowns, like as the king, jack, 10, 7, which is strong enough. But for the rest, we're just calling them. Remember, with the ace in our hand and 2 Broadway cards that are double suited, we are often going for the 3-bet, like the ace, king, queen, deuce double suited. Finally, 3 Broadway and 1 non-Broadway that are single suited here. Let's look at those combinations. A lot of folding suddenly, 51%, calling 44%, and only 3-betting 5%. We fold ace, king, jack, deuce, suited to the king. So very gappy hand. We don't have the nut suit, so we definitely don't want to call. The hand is also too weak to 3-bet, so it's a fold. Hands to 3-bet again, high cards, connection, and having the non-nut suit. Those are candidates to use as sort of a 3-bet semi-bluff here. This is one of them that is potential candidate to 3-bet. So these are some examples again. Same for ace, king, 10, 8. If these hands would have the nut suit, I would just call them. These hands play perfectly fine. Single raise, pot in position, heads up, as well as multi-way. So I wouldn't go for 3-bet them, not having 4 Broadways. Okay. Finally here, please check out these final and other categories yourself. There's less 3-betting there, of course. There are some calls. Not too many here. These groups are more disconnected. But I definitely want to ask you to jump into our software and check it out yourself. The more time you spend going over these ranges yourself, the better you test your intuition, and the more quicker you will make improvements here in this area. Because I think a lot of players underestimate the mistakes here that they make, even though we are aware even though we are somehow aware of our cold calling ranges, I think many of us will still cold call way too wide. And I think it's important to be very critical, to focus very critical on this situation and make some steps towards becoming better here. Okay, that's about it. We have done 2 lessons versus early position and versus a wider, versus early position and versus a cutoff, cold calling in position. We saw hands that we were supposed to call. We saw a few 3-bet candidates because it's so correlated towards calling as well. Same for folding. But the main takeaway is here. Check out your own cold call frequencies here in your database in this situation. Check out what hands are you calling at the moment, which hand you shouldn't cold call, and get a better understanding of why cold calling tight is so important at these low stakes. I will see you in the next video next week on the Crushing Small Stakes PLO course. My name is Luuk for the PLO Mastermind.